So what we're going to do, now last week we did not have a Bible study. We had the Thanksgiving midweek service. So it was 2 weeks ago that we did chapters 1 and 2. And so now we're going to dive into chapter 3 and 4 tonight, 2 chapters. But in order to understand chapter 3 and 4, we must go to chapter 2. It's one of those things you have to get. So I'm going to summarize chapters 1 and 2 quickly. Basically, Saul dies. David gets word that Saul dies. Somebody tells him. David speaks very highly of Saul at his funeral, gives a eulogy. And then chapter 2 happens. David asked God, should I go back? Since Saul's dead and I was anointed years ago to be king, should I go back? God says, yeah, go back. So he goes to Hebron. They anoint him as king. Meanwhile, Saul's general, Abner, survives the war that Saul and his boys didn't. He goes back. Saul's surviving son, Ishbosheth, survives. So Abner makes him king. So now you have 2 kings reigning over Israel. There's a divided country. What happens next is vital to understand chapters 3 and 4. The generals, the one up north, Abner, the one down south, Joab, David's general. They meet somewhere in the middle at a pool. They puff their chest out and they challenge one another to see if they had charisma or whatever it's called. I forget what it's called in Long Beach. But anyway, they challenge each other. So they put 12 guys against 12 guys. It started being very competitive. It began to be heated. More guys got involved. It became a civil war between the north and the south. Abner loses. He runs away. Joab's brother, which is David's nephew, Asahel, chases him. And Abner says, you better turn away, buddy. You better turn away. And Asahel goes, yeah, you're right, man. He's younger than Abner. He's chasing him. In fact, the Bible says he's light on his feet. So he's following him. Abner stops in his track, grabs the spear, takes the rear end of the spear, and smites him right through the gut. Asahel is dead. Joab is furious now because his brother's dead. So Joab starts chasing Abner, and Abner then turns around to Joab and go, time. Can we call truce, please? More people are going to die. So Joab goes, okay. That's kind of what happens. So that's chapters 1 and 2. So now we're getting into chapter 3. This is one of my favorite. Now, 2 Samuel is my favorite book in the Old Testament. This is one of my favorite chapters in the book. It's not my favorite, but it's one of my favorite because of what happens. And this is so awesome. So if you're taking notes there under chapter 3 and 4, Roman number 1, the betrayal of Abner, and letter A underneath that, the details. The details. Number 1, David's fortune. Small letter A underneath that, the strength of his house. So let's look at verse number 1, 2 Samuel chapter 3. Did I go too fast? Chapter 3, verse 1. Now there was long war between the house of Saul and the house of David. But David waxed stronger and stronger, and the house of Saul waxed weaker and weaker. All right, so David's popularity is growing. Ishbosheth is not so much. So we see letter A, the strength of his house. Letter B, the sons born to his house. So David is in Hebron, and he's going to have, so several years are going to pass, he's going to have several boys. Look at verse 2. And unto David were sons born in Hebron. His firstborn was Amnon of Ahinoam, the Jezreelitess. His second, Chileab of Abigail, the wife of Nabal the Carmelite. And the third, Absalom, the son of Maacah, the daughter of Talmai, king of Geshur. And the fourth, Adonijah, the son of Haggith. Now the last two, his fifth and sixth sons, we don't hear that much about them. The first 4 we do. But verse 4, and verse 4 at the end. And the 5th, Shephatiah, the son of Abital, and the 6th, Ithream, by Eglah, David's wife. These were born to David in Hebron. All right? So you have the betrayal of Abner, the details. Number 1 was David's fortune. Number 2, Ishbosheth's fall. Ishbosheth's fall. Letter A underneath that, the argument. Now, back then, when a king died, all of his possessions, including his concubines, would go to the next person. So Saul had a concubine. Her name was Rizpah. And so now that Saul's dead, Ishbosheth gets the concubine. But he's now going to accuse the kingmaker, Abner. Abner, the guy that was faithful and loyal to Saul, Abner who set Ishbosheth up as king, Abner who survived the battle, and now he's going to accuse Abner of sleeping with his concubine. Look at verse number 6. And it came to pass, while there was war between the house of Saul and the house of David, that Abner made himself strong for the house of Saul. Saul had a concubine, whose name was Rizpah, the daughter of Ai. And Ishbosheth said to Abner, Wherefore hast thou gone into my father's concubine? Then was Abner very wroth for the words of Ishbosheth, and said, Am I a dog's head? Now stop there. That phrase, dog's head, is mentioned, I think, 4 times. Don't quote me, but I think it's mentioned 4 times in the Bible, all in the Old Testament. And it's basically said, you think I'm worthless? You think I'm that much of a low life that I would do this? And he says, how dare you? Now, if you've ever been older and insulted by a younger person, you almost feel like this, kind of like, you pipsqueak. Man, as a parent, you almost want to say to your kid, man, I brought you into this world and I could take you out, you know? And Abner's got this mentality now, how dare you accuse me? I was loyal to your daddy. I was loyal to you. You didn't even go to battle with your other brothers. You peon. And he gets mad. Abner's going to get mad. He's actually going to defect and going to try to join David. Watch this. He said, Am I a dog's head, which against Judah do show kindness this day unto the house of Saul, thy father, to his brethren, to his friends, and have not delivered thee into the hand of David, that thou chargest me today with the fault concerning this woman? So do God to Abner, and more also, except as the Lord hath sworn to David, even so I do to him, to translate the kingdom from the house of Saul, to set up the throne of David over Israel and over Judah, from Dan even to Beersheba. Now stop there. He used the word translate. So he's telling, Abner's telling Ishbosheth, you know what I'm going to do, buddy? I'm going to get all the kingdom away from you, and I'm going to bring it to David. That's what he's telling him. And the phrase from Dan to Beersheba. Now, on the map here, I know it's, can you blow that puppy up? You can? You're amazing. So you see Beersheba? Beersheba's way down south. Anytime you see the phrase from Dan to Beersheba, it's always that order, that way. Dan's way, way up north. It's not listed on this map, but Beersheba's down south. So it basically says, we're going to make David king over all the land, from north to south. Right now it's kind of divided, Ishbosheth, but David's going to master it all. And verse 11, and he could not answer Abner a word again because he feared him. So Ishbosheth, for some reason, didn't go to battle with his daddy and his brothers. And for some reason, Abner was really the guy leading the country. I don't know what political side you're on. My opinion, that's how our current president, politically, I think someone's been running the show for a while now. And I think that's the way it was here. Abner certainly wasn't the guy anointed to be king, but he was running the show because Ishbosheth's scared to death of him. But he's an experienced soldier, and Ishbosheth is not. So here's this man telling him, I'm going to take the kingdom away from you, buddy. How dare you insult me? And so we see the argument. Letter B, the agreement. The agreement. Now I'm going to read several verses here. But Abner is basically going to take the kingdom away, and Ishbosheth's going to agree to this. He's going to say, okay, all right. Because he knows that he's not really the leader, and he knows that Abner is the leader, but David's gaining popularity, so let's translate it there, down south. So look at verse 12. And Abner sent messengers to David on his behalf, saying, whose is the land? Saying also, make thy league with me, and behold, my hand shall be with thee, to bring about all Israel unto thee. So that's the first agreement. Abner makes the first step to David, saying, can't we all get along? Okay? Can't we bring all this together? Verse 13, and he said, well, I will make a league with thee, but one thing I require of thee. Here's the stipulation. That is, thou shalt not see my face, except thou first bring Michal, or Michael. And so, that was the agreement. That was the stipulation to see how serious they were about bringing peace. Verse 14, and David sent messengers to Ishbosheth, Saul's son, saying, deliver me my wife Michal, which I espoused to me for 100 foreskins of the Philistines. So now notice Ishbosheth is in the agreement, the talks. David wanted to make sure he was going through proper channels, that it wasn't just Abner. So he writes to the leader, Ishbosheth, and to make sure that we're all, copacetic, we're all on the same page. Verse 15, and Ishbosheth sent and took her from her husband, even from Phatiel, the son of Laish. Now, on this map, can you go down a little bit here? This little blue squiggly line here, here's Phatiel. He's following Michael. In the next couple of verses, it's one of the saddest things that ever happened. Put yourself in his shoes here. Here it's Phatiel. On the map it says Phatiel, but it's Phatiel, and he's been married to the king's daughter. He's been invited to the royal family during holidays and things like that. And now all of a sudden his wife is ripped from him. So I feel for this guy, because she is like this pawn that's being maneuvered between men, and these other powerful men are controlling her. Watch verse 16. And her husband went with her along weeping behind her to Bahurim. Then said Abner unto him, go, return. And he returned. So Abner said, stop your whining, get out of here. You're not part of this deal. And so Phatiel go home, and he's wifeless now. And so Michal comes to David, and David now knows that everyone's serious about getting things back to normal. Verse 17, Abner had communication with the elders of Israel, saying, ye sought for David in times past to be king over you. Now then do it. Now, I don't have it underlined in this Bible, but in another Bible that I had for years, I have that phrase underlined, then do it. I preached a message, this is way back in California, because Nike had a slogan years ago, just do it. I don't know if they still do, but it used to be just do it. And I preached about that with a Nike shoe as an illustration. Because sometimes we make commitments all the time. You know, I'm going to read my Bible every day. Just do it. And so that was the message I was preaching. And it's a great message for teenagers to preach, and anybody really, because we just need to do it, you know. But he says, look, you guys talked about David being king. He says, it's time. Let's do it. For the Lord hath spoken of David, saying, by the hand of my servant David I will save my people Israel out of the hand of the Philistines, out of the hand of all their enemies. And Abner also spake in the ears of Benjamin. And Abner went also to speak in the ears of David and Hebron, all that seemed good to Israel, that seemed good to the whole house of Benjamin. So Abner came to David to Hebron, 20 men with him, and David made Abner and the men that were with him a feast. And Abner said to David, I will arise and go, and will gather all Israel unto my lord the king, that they may make a league with thee, and that thou mayest reign over all thine heart desireth. And David sent Abner away, and he went in peace. So Abner's done his due diligence to keep Ishbosheth in the loop, to keep David in the loop, to make sure Michal was delivered. Then he speaks to some of the leaders. He speaks to the people down south. I mean, oftentimes when you're negotiating and arbitrating something, you have to talk to several people to make sure things. Now he's telling David, I'm going to go back up north and get everything ready so they're okay with the merging together of our lands. So you have the argument, you have the agreement. Then letter C, you have the assassination. So, all right. So, all right. Let's just read. I won't skip ahead. Look at verse number 22. And behold, the servants of David and Joab came from pursuing a troop, and brought in a great spoil with them. Now stop there. Down at the bottom here, here's David in Hebron. You see this green little arrow? Joab is going from raids. He's coming over there with some of the men. He's been gone from Hebron while Abner has been communing with David in Hebron. You remember what was the problem? Joab hates Abner because Abner killed his brother, Asahel. So now Joab is going to come back to Hebron and find out that his enemy, his arch enemy, his nemesis, Abner, was right there. So he's going to chew David out. He's going to say, what are you doing, David? Abner was here for no good. What are you doing? What are you thinking? He's going to chew him out. And what happens next is amazing as well. Now keep in mind, this has happened before where some people think they know what's best, and they think they're doing the king a favor, and they want promoted. This happened way back in chapter 1. Anyway, so watch what happens here. Look at verse number 23. When Joab and all the host that was with him were come, they told Joab, saying, Abner, the son of Ner, came to the king, and he hath sent him away, and he is gone in peace. Then Joab came to the king and said, What hast thou done? Behold, Abner came unto thee. Why is it that thou hast sent him away? And he is quite gone. Thou knowest, Abner, the son of Ner, that he came to deceive thee, to know thy going out and thy coming in, and to know all that thou doest. And when Joab was come out from David, he sent messengers after Abner, which brought him again from the well of Sarah. Now, the well of Sarah is just, Abner had just left. Joab shows up, and so this is where the well is. It's just right above Hebron. So that's where that's at. And I lost my place. Somebody help me out. 27 now. And when Abner was returned to Hebron, Joab took him aside in the gate to speak with him quietly, and smote him there under the 5th rib, that he died for the blood of Asahel his brother. Now, what makes this so bad, besides the fact that it was against David's wishes, which it'll be made very clear, David had nothing to do with this. David's going to make it clear to him, to his brother Abishai, and to all the people publicly, I had nothing to do with this. I washed my hands. Joab did it. He publicly declares, Joab did this. But what makes it worse is that it was done in Hebron. Now, why is that so bad? Hebron was one of the cities of refuge. And if you're not familiar with the cities of refuge, basically, here's the Jordan River right there, right above the Dead Sea. On this side, there are 3 cities. On that side, there are 3 cities. And anytime there was a murder or an accidental death or something, and somebody wanted to plead their case, They would run to safety to one of these cities. So that city was supposed to be a city of refuge. And Hebron was one of those cities. But Joab doesn't care. He doesn't care about the authority, David. Doesn't care what David wants. Doesn't care about the Hebron. He just wants vindication, retribution. And so there's the assassination. All right, so letter A was the details. Letter B, the denunciation. The denunciation. David is going to condemn Joab's deeds here, okay? I know we're spending most of our time in chapter 3, but chapter 4, we're going lickety split. I mean, we'll be done in chapter 4 just within minutes. Look at chapter 28. Not chapter 28, verse 28. And afterward, when David heard it, he said, I and my kingdom are guiltless before the Lord forever from the blood of Abner, the son of Ner. Let it rest on the head of Joab and all his father's house, and let there not fail from the house of Joab one that hath an issue, or that is a leper, that leaneth on a staff, that falleth on the sword, that lacketh bread. So Joab and Abishai his brother slew Abner, because he had slain their brother Asahel at Gibeon in the battle. And David sent to Joab and to all the people that were with him, and he says, rend your clothes and gird you with sackcloth and mourn before Abner. And King David himself followed the bier, B-I-E-R. That's a coffin. The word bier is coffin. A funny story, my very first funeral that I ever did, I preached out of this text. You're going to think I'm making this up. It's a true story. The family was Irish. They did not go to church. They were looking for a pastor. They were drinkers. In fact, they were going to bar afterwards. And I knew this. So I preached about the beer. No joke. I preached about the beer. They thought it was funny. The beer is a coffin. And King David followed the beer. So you have the denunciation. He publicly denunciates or announces to everybody, Joab did this, not me. And then letter C, the dejection. The dejection. David mourns for the last several verses. He condemns Joab and Abishai. I'm going to point out just one verse, the very last verse in chapter 3. He said, and I am this day weak, though anointed king, and these men, the sons of Zeruiah, be too hard for me. Now, Zeruiah was David's sister, so the sons of Zeruiah are David's nephews, Joab, Abishai, and Asahel. Asahel's dead. In 1 Samuel, when they had opportunities to kill Saul, it was Joab and Abishai. Let's kill Saul, let's kill Saul, let's kill Saul. And over again, no, you guys are causing me a headache, stop this. And David, once again, is saying, you sons of Zeruiah, you cause me too much stress. And so I think all of us can identify when people cause us stress and problems in our life. So we get that. But now let's go into chapter 4, and this will be real quick. Roman number 2, the betrayal of Ishbosheth. Letter A, the accident. Now, chapter 4 is interesting. Have you ever read the Bible and all of a sudden it just throws this one verse at you and you're like, why is that verse there? It doesn't fit the rest of the chapter. Why is it there? There's a verse like that here. But it comes to play later in chapter 9. So we're going to dissect that one verse now, and then we'll read the rest of the chapter and we'll be done real quick like. Look at verse number 4. And Jonathan, Saul's son, had a son that was lame of his feet. Now stop there. We'll read the rest of the verse in just a second. When all the commotion was going on between the Philistines and Israel lost, things were panicking. People were trying to grab things, everything they could. Well, Saul had a son by the name of Jonathan. Jonathan had a son. This guy was just a kid. The nurse grabs this kid and he falls. Whether it was, down the stairs or out the balcony or whatever, but he falls so badly that he becomes lame. That's what this verse is referring to. All right, so he was 5 years old when the tidings came out of Saul and Jonathan out of Jezreel. And his nurse took him up, and he fled. And it came to pass, as she made haste to flee, that he fell and became lame, and his name was Mephibosheth. Now that guy is one of my favorite characters, and we'll cover him as we go through, but Mephibosheth. And so it has nothing to do with the rest of the chapter, but it's interesting there. That's the accident. Letter B is the assassination. Well, Ishbosheth's country, his army is falling apart. Abner, the general, has now defected, is trying to bring everybody together. Abner's men, the generals, are thinking, good night, who's leading this charade? Who's in charge? And so they're thinking, if David's going to be king, we might as well get advanced. So they think they're going to do David a favor, and they're going to sneak in there and kill Ishbosheth during a siesta. It was typical for them to take a nap time during the heat of the day. And so they're going to sneak in there and kill him. Look at verse 1. And when Saul's son heard that Abner was dead in Hebron, his hands were feeble and all the Israelites were troubled. And Saul's son had two men that were captains of bands. The name of the one was Baanah, the name of the other Rechab, the son of Rimmon, I'm going to butcher this, of Beerothite, of the children of Benjamin, for Beeroth also was reckoned to Benjamin. And the Beerothites fled to Gittaim and were sojourners there unto this day. Skip down to verse number 5. And the sons of Rimmon, the Beerothite, Rechab and Baanah, these two dudes, went and came about the heat of the day to the house of Ishbosheth, who lay on a bed at noon. Now stop there. Let me tell you a funny story. Years ago in California, I was invited to preach at a Christian school. I thought I was preaching only to teenagers. I was preaching out of this text. It was during the time of Halloween, and so I thought, okay, let's make this interesting. So I grabbed a styrofoam ball. I grabbed a mask, a Halloween mask of a devil, and put it on there. I then covered it up with blankets and such and straw in a big giant basket. And I skipped along this platform while I'm preaching to these people, carrying the basket. Because these two captains are going to sneak in with a basket, cut off Ishbosheth's head, put it in the basket, and walk out as though nothing happened. And they're going to get away with murder, literally. You say, how's that funny? What I did not know is elementary kids came into the chapel, and as I pulled out the head and go, like this, and the kids are going, I was never invited back to that school for some reason. I don't know why. But at the time I thought it was funny, but now looking back at it, anyway. But so let's read what they did. Verse 6, and they came thither into the midst of the house, as though they would have fetched wheat. And they smote him under the fifth rib, so they stabbed him in the heart. And Rechab and Baanah, his brother, escaped. When they came into the house, he lay on his bed in his bedchamber, and they smote him, slew him, beheaded him, took his head, got them away through the plain all night. Who in the world says the Bible is boring? I don't understand that. And this is better than any soap opera. And it's very vivid, I'll tell you that. And then lastly, letter C, the avenging. The avenging. Basically what happens is the two captains bring the head to David, thinking, David, look what we got for you. Thinking David would be pleased, he would promote them. David turns around and said, do you think I promoted the guy in chapter 1 that came to me and said that he killed Saul? No, I killed him, and I'm going to kill you too as well. And the way that he kills them is very vivid as well. Verse 11, how much more when wicked men have slain a righteous person in his own house upon his bed? Shall I not therefore now require his blood of your hand and take you away from the earth? And David commanded the young men, and they slew them, cut off their hands and their feet, and hanged them over the pool in Hebron. They took the head of Ishbosheth and buried it in the sepulchre of Abner in Hebron. So think of the setting, because next week when we pick this up, Ishbosheth's dead. Abner is dead, who was leading the army up north. Asahel is dead. The only two guys that are still in leadership position, Joab and Abishai, have been given David headaches. And that's what we're with, the country. What a mess. And David's got to bring all that together. We'll look into that next week, as David is going to try to rule in the midst of chaos. And may God help us in the midst of chaos in our life to seek him, because he can always help us. Father God, thank you so much for the Bible, how vivid it is, how real it is. You didn't have to include these details and the goriness and the blood of it, and yet it shows the humanity of life and the frailty and the emotions involved and the decisions made, and we can all relate to these decisions. Some of them good, some of them bad. And I pray, God, that you'd help us as we learn from David how he was dealing with stressful people in his life, as he was dealing with sorrow and things, people were doing things that were out of his control. And some things we can control in our life, God, some things we just cannot. But we seek you. And I pray that you'd help us, Lord, sometimes as life is chaotic, to seek peace, to seek the God of peace, as we need you to help us in our life, to navigate, to control, to oversee, to know what to do next. And I pray that you'd help us to continue to learn from the life of David. And thank you for these precious people here tonight. All those requests that we mentioned before, we once again bring them to you before your throne, because you and you alone have the power to answer them. We praise you tonight. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.